If you ask me, the evidence is clear. There were a lot of factors at play for the GOP defeats across the nation. Support for gun rights did not harm the few Republicans who won in the 2022 midterm elections. It didn't take long for the anti-gun activists in the media to make the claim supporting gun control is a winning issue for Democrats. But that's really only the case if you ignore a lot of the other problems. Abortion, record inflation, crime, concerns about democracy, and even climate change and healthcare ranked higher as a concern for voters than gun policy, according to NBC. Additionally, the New York Times reported last month only 1% of likely voters thought guns were the most important problem. And no doubt, if guns were the only issue on the ballot, or even a major issue to voters, there would be very different results. The fact is, there were not too many factors at play for anyone to make the claim that people want more gun control. But there were a lot of glaring cases in which pro-gun elected officials were rewarded for their strong pro-gun actions. For example, Senator Ron Johnson and then Representative Ted Budd both knew they were in very tight races, and they did the honorable thing and voted against this last summer's gun control bill. And would you look at that? Both of them won their races during a year which was not really good for most of the GOP. And from what we're hearing, GOP Senate leadership wanted the bill to come to the Senate floor for a vote because it was going to help Republicans in their re-election bids. And much to the surprise of leadership, it looks like voting for gun control doesn't encourage gun owners to vote for Republicans. And although one of the Republican senators who voted for this gun control bill is retiring, his seat actually flipped to the wildly anti-gun Democrat. I mean, what reason did he give Republicans to vote for a Republican successor? None. The reality that the GOP needs to understand is that gun owners won't turn out for Republicans if they think Republicans don't care about their rights. But when politicians show they do support gun rights, gun owners want them to stay in power. That's obvious. Another example of this is that every single governor who signed constitutional carry into law won re-election. Brian Kemp won Georgia. Chris Sununu won New Hampshire. Kim Reynolds won Iowa. Kevin Stitt won Oklahoma. Greg Abbott won Texas, and Ohio Governor Mike DeWine also won re-election. All of the governors that I just mentioned either signed constitutional carry laws in the current term or a previous term. And additionally, although Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida did not sign constitutional carry, he called for the legislation to be sent to him for his signature. If guns really were on the ballot in Florida, then the people of Florida clearly are rewarding him for his pro-gun stance by giving him another term. And even the folks in Uvalde, who suffered the horrendous tragedy of 19 children and 2 teachers murdered at Robb Elementary School in May of this year by a deranged school shooter, decided to vote more than 60% for Governor Greg Abbott, who again signed permitless carry into law. Now I know that there's a lot of you that were expecting a massive red wave across the country. And although it wasn't what Republicans may have hoped for, there was actually a red wave. In fact, there were a couple, but they appear to be contained in only New York and Florida. And at the time of filming this video, it's pretty certain that Republicans are going to take the House. It also looks like Republicans massively outperformed in those 2 states, New York and Florida. In Florida, it's for a lot of reasons, and you have to give some credit to Governor Ron DeSantis, but what about New York? To that, we have a lot of reasons, including Lee Zeldin. Zeldin has been a really good friend of GOA, and actually was closer to becoming the Republican governor of New York than anyone else has in decades. If a GOA ally with a lifelong history of no compromise support for the Second Amendment can get within almost 5% of toppling the radical anti-gun Governor Hochul in the supposedly anti-gun state of New York, this shows again, being pro-gun does not hurt your election chances. Not to mention, the anti-gun state measures did not do very well at all. In Oregon, Measure 114, which is a magazine ban, barely won, which is still a closer margin than the race for the US Senate or governor. Now, the ballot measure in Iowa, which would add similar Second Amendment language to their state constitution, won by a massive 65%, which is nearly 10 points more than Senator Chuck Grassley's win in that state. Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio has developed a reputation as someone who isn't really a hardliner on a lot of conservative or right-wing issues. Some would say that his approach is to avoid rocking the boat as much as possible. Even so, he signed a bill expanding stand your ground laws, removing that so-called duty to retreat, as well as signing a bill reducing the training requirements for teachers to carry a gun at school. And although he dragged his feet on signing constitutional carry into law, he still signed it. And the vote in every county in Ohio shifted more towards Republicans than when Trump won the state in the 2020 election. Take a look at this graphic from the New York Times, and you can see Governor DeWine won the state by a lot bigger numbers than Trump in every single county. But the data does tell us one thing. If a candidate is on the record for their support for the Second Amendment, it doesn't hurt their election chances. If anything, it looks like it helps. And here's how much being in support of the Second Amendment actually helps. Congressman Thomas Massie is the co-chair of the Second Amendment caucus, and he won by massive margins. And then there's Congressman Matt Gaetz, and he's another firebrand who's constantly under attack by the media for his statements and stances in support of the Second Amendment. And he coasted to victory on election night. And what about Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene? She's no stranger to taking tough stances on a lot of issues that are considered controversial by the anti-gun left, and still makes guns a top issue on her campaign site. Plus, she was outspent by her opponent by nearly $5 million, but she still won by huge margins. And so what this means to GOA is that we need to focus on the future. We've already endorsed Herschel Walker, and we need every ounce of resources spent on that race. Even if the anti-gunners split the Senate 50-50, there's going to be massive impacts in Senate committees that give us a solid chance to fight back. But to do that, we need to win in Georgia. And so what the takeaway of all this is for GOA is that being pro-gun means you get a seat in Congress. They get rewarded over and over and over again. All right, we hope you liked this video. We'll see you next time.